Welcome, friends and foes, survivors and killers. Let's sit around the campfire together and talk about Dead by Daylight. Specifically, Dead by Daylight's newest survivor, and I can't quite believe I'm saying this, the Academy Award-winning Hollywood actor, Nicolas Cage. So yeah, he's finally here. The man himself, Nick fucking Cage in Dead by Daylight. If you told me at the start of 2023 that I'd be making a lore video on a real person, and not just any real person, but actual, factual Nicolas Coppola Cage, I'd say you were joking. But Nick Cage is here playing a fictionalised version of himself in Dead by Daylight, and this means we're looking at Nick Cage's lore today. Before we dive into the story, I want to go on the record about the Nick Cage release as a whole because it's absolutely phenomenal. Everything from the eclectic but deceptively powerful trio of perks he comes with, to the 10 minutes of wacky voice work by Cage himself, all double down on this release's surreal comic tone. I think it all plays into what is indisputably Cage's greatest strength as a comic actor: his absolute commitment to the bit. I'll be talking about this later, but I just wanted to push this idea out here right now before we get into the lore, because the idea of this chapter absolutely committing to the bit is what makes the lore so charming. Dead by Daylight's version of Nick Cage is, well, Nick Cage. A beloved and talented actor with decades of experience under his belt and a lifetime of accolades for his work throughout various genres. Approached by a mysterious director promising him the role of a lifetime. The upcoming hit movie Descend Beyond is looking for its male lead, and Nick Cage is obsessed with the script. The image of desolate ruins and macabre and horrifying rituals. The vision of it seemed so real he had to take the role. He even offered to do it for free, something his agent did not thank him for and ultimately talked him out of, which may be a not very subtle allusion to Cage's well-documented history of extravagant spending habits that pushed him into huge debt for several years. No sooner had he signed on to the project than he was whisked away in a private jet to an island in the Pacific, into the loving care of the film's director Pauline Stamper. Wow, doesn't that name sound a little, familiar to you? In any case, the set looks very military. He's escorted by armed guards and black unmarked cars to a setup that looks more like a compound than a film set before arriving on location. The cavernous temple exactly the way Cage had pictured it. He insisted on filming at once, and as the cameras rolled, he daubed sigils onto the temple's stone pillar in red ink from a bowl, speaking his incantations word for word from his script. He looked up to see the pillar glowing, arcane symbols and sigils lit up with an otherworldly light. It wasn't meant to happen, this should just be a CGI special effect, right? He reached out to touch them, and tendrils of dark fog, not dry ice but actual fog, lashed out at him. He turned in desperation to the crew. Something was clearly amiss here, but the crew, the cameras, the whole set had gone. Vanished into the gloom, and thus the entity claimed Nick Cage for its own. Right, before we talk about anything else, I just want to say, I like that they gave us something with some meat on its bones here. It's not as long and drawn out as most original character stories are these days, but it's a damn sight more than the post-it notes that we typically get for licensed characters. Which fits because Nick Cage is kind of in the middle as a fictionalised version of a real person playing himself. Because it's not actually a license though, there's a lot of fun that we get to have writing Nick Cage into DBD's universe. The film Cage is starring in is called Descend Beyond, suggesting it's probably a fictionalisation of the story of Talbot Grimes the Blight, with Cage playing the role of everyone's favourite Scottish alchemist himself. And judging by that last name, Pauline Stamper is either a relative of or an alternate universe version of Otto Stamper, a Black Veil affiliated scientist whose cult activities on the Withered Isle led to the creation of the Dredge, before being tortured into madness and catatonia by the Doctor, who is his pupil at the Dose Memorial Institute. For a second I even thought the Pacific island Cage was taken to was Dyer Island, Talbot's own headquarters, which would give a real meaning to shooting on location. But sadly, neither the real Dyer Island off the South African coast, or DBD's fictitious Dyer Island in the vicinity of India are anywhere near the Pacific. In terms of what actually happened, there are two explanations. Most likely is that the Blight was taken a couple of hundred years before, as we saw in his lore, and Cage unwittingly reenacted the rituals that Talbot performed that took him to the entity's realm in the first place. But there is an alternative. It's been established in DBD lore before that what is fiction in one universe is reality in another. Thus a script from Descend Beyond was inspired by the real-life events of the Blight's life in an alternate universe, Whatever the original intention was from the writers, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure the distinction really matters, I'm really glad regardless that something as genuinely bizarre and off-kilter as Nick Cage arriving in DVD has still been done with an actual level of sincerity and an earnest desire to maintain the cohesion of the game's universe. They could easily have just done what they do with licensed characters, shove out what's effectively a tweet's worth of lore, just to patch up the gap like a sticking plaster over a bullet wound, but in a manner very on brand for Nick Cage, they did something that should be absurd and out of place, and committed to it enough that they made it not just work, but shine. But before we continue, let's take a moment to remember all the struggles Nick Cage has been through on the silver screen throughout the years. Stung to death by bees in The Wicker Man, tortured and burned to death in Kick-Ass, and perhaps the worst fate of all, being in Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. Just because you're not Nick Cage, unless you are Nick Cage obviously, in which case, hi, big fan of your work. Doesn't mean your workplace is free of danger or risk of injury though. But should the worst happen, Morgan and Morgan can be right there by your side, ready to take up the fight for you and get you the compensation you deserve. If you're injured at work and don't know where to start, Morgan and Morgan ensure that it's easier than ever to make those first few steps to getting the compensation you're owed. Hiring a lawyer can be a daunting process, but with Morgan and Morgan you can submit a claim without ever having to leave the couch. In 8 clicks or less you can submit your claim to Morgan and Morgan and trust that your legal troubles are in capable hands, so you can focus on your recovery and well-being, get your life back together. For more information, check out fourthpeople.com or dial #key law in your phone. Now let's get back talking about the man himself, Nicolas Cage. The hype and success of Nick Cage's arrival into the fog has brought a lot of people asking, what about other celebrity guests? We got Nick Cage now, so what about Taylor Swift, Serena Williams or the Chuckle Brothers?
A secret door!
We could even have Boris Johnson, and he can have a perk where he lies to the killer about how many health states he's got, so you have to launch a parliamentary inquiry as to whether you can use your fucking death hard or not. Today I'm here to announce medkits have been privatised. If you want healing, you'll have to pay £4,000 plus consultation fees. Anyone has a problem with that, you can find me in my secretary. But I'm going to take the argument here that there are very, very few celebrities out there who carry a DVD half chapter as well as Nick Cage has demonstrated he can do. And the reason why circles back to what I was saying at the beginning. Nick Cage absolutely commits to the bit, every single time, and manages to bring the sincerity of a genuinely great actor to even the most absurd projects and concepts. Many have accused Cage over the years of overacting, but he's described what he does as mega acting. Something more akin to old school theatre than typical Hollywood realism. When you're acting on a stage rather than in front of a camera, you have to mega act. You're in a physical space with your audience, and you've got to reach the crowd at the back in the cheap seats just as much as the guys in the front row. So theatre actors will mega act to make sure what's going on stage is clear. He is undoubtedly Hollywood's premier mega actor, like a higher budget Brian Blessed. Sorry, gotta do this properly. Brian Blessed! If overacting is filling your glass up too much so it's spilling out and ruining your drink, mega acting is just getting a really big glass. And Nick Cage is a master of filling that glass to perfection. And with his arrival in Dead by Daylight, Nick Cage has turned mega acting into mega voice acting. Cage has recorded almost 10 minutes of voice lines that get played both in the lobby and even in trials themselves, making him the first survivor to have in-game voice lines. And they're as zany and over the top as you expect from him. A friend of mine said they'd probably just put a mic in front of Nick when he's playing DVD and just let him go nuts, and honestly, I wouldn't doubt it because he has the same infectious energy and enthusiasm that he has for basically everything he does. Hearing him sing the Halloween theme, or get chatty with his best pal Sadako, it's really charming, and doubles down on the absurdity of the situation in a way that a less committed voice actor would have struggled to sell properly. We've had 3 celebrity voice actors in DVD so far, and Cage is inarguably the most dedicated we've ever had. Not gonna lie, as much as I love Bruce Campbell to death, he didn't do a lot of voice work for DVDs at Ash. I don't think he really put that much into it. He can be a great voice actor in the role of Ash, as Evil Dead the game has shown us, but I actually think his heart was in it for Dead by Daylight. Doug Bradley is very much the opposite of Nick Cage, defined by his ability to underact and sound very emotionless and commanding in his performance as Pinhead. But despite how impressed I was that they got him back to Pinhead after 20 years absence from the role, the sheer breadth and joy of Cage's voice work is, in my opinion, a cut above the rest. All three of his perks perfectly fit the tone the chapter is going for, with their zany, often RNG based effects, but deceptively powerful effects, melding with the over-the-top voice work and the sheer novelty of Nick fucking Cage in DBD to make a character who feels like a joke and also thoroughly, relentlessly impressive. Absurdity meeting sincerity in the middle. Nick Cage's specialty brought into this game in every single way that matters. And you can see this when you look at Nick Cage's filmography, to see where this characterization of himself is most clearly distilled. This isn't the first time he's played a fictionalized version of himself after all. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is a meta-comedy starring Nick Cage, playing Nick Cage, as he meets and befriends a wealthy superfan, played by Pedro Pascal, and is contracted by the CIA to investigate his organised crime connections. Through this movie, Cage's career as a Hollywood superstar is looked back on fondly, with a due sense of levity and self-parody, but fondly all the same. With action scenes reminiscent of his roles in Con Air, Face Off and The Rock, most of plenty of comedy enhanced by the chemistry between Cage and Pascal, who was himself a massive Cage fan, who was kind of starstruck to meet him on set. It is a conceptually absurd movie with a lot of elements and tones and ideas that it juggles, but thanks in large part to Cage's ability to play anything seriously and with total commitment to the bit, it actually sticks the landing, and let his captivating performance do the rest. He's an extravagant spender, he's a bit of a nerd, his love for the craft of filmmaking and the big figures who pushed it forwards is palpable, and the Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent brings those to life to paint a picture of Cage who, through his absurdities, becomes a surprising true-to-life exaggeration of the man himself. Dead by Daylight's Nicolas Cage is effectively the same as Unbearable Weight's version. I'm not going to go so far as to say this is a canon continuation from Unbearable Weight or anything like that, but it's clear a lot of Nick's story and portrayal in DBD is very similar to that film's version of him. Of course, the real Cage wouldn't demand filming and start immediately on landing or offer to do the film for free, but it is a deliberate exaggeration, a mega act of his known passion for his work, and it fits with his constant film references and musings we see in Unbearable Weight. Hell, his model even has the same beard smoking jacket combo that he wears in that film, even though nowadays he's clean shaven, as we saw when he appeared at Summer Games Fest this year to promote the chapter. A lot of actors in Hollywood end up defining the roles they take. Ian McKellen defined Gandalf, Sigourney Weaver defined Ellen Ripley, Peter Dinklage defined Tyrion Lannister, Peter Capaldi defined the Doctor. And these performances simply could never have been done the same way by any other actors. And many other actors end up being defined by the roles they tend to take in turn. Actors like Jim Carrey, Jenna Ortega, and, sorry, I've got to do this again, effectively thrive on being typecast. When you hire these actors for a project, you probably know exactly what you're going to get. But I don't think there's an actor alive today in Hollywood who both defines and is defined by the roles he plays quite as much as Nicolas Cage. There's a whole slew of roles out there across film history that are Nick Cage roles, almost like they've been custom built for him. Across genres and across decades, there will always be Nick Cage roles and nobody else can truly play them like he does. I'm deeply pleased to say Dead by Daylight has brought to it the most perfect Nick Cage role of all, himself, and the role is played masterfully. Cage himself says this release only took place because of a son of his, most likely his younger son Kal-El, who enjoys Dead by Daylight, and he wanted to be part of something that his son loved. And you can really tell, because everything about the Nick Cage half chapter is such a labour of love. You can tell the people who made it gave a shit about what they were doing, making something fun and charming because sod it, it's a laugh, and nobody cared more than Cage himself. He put 110% into his work for this chapter, and that shouldn't be surprising because he does that for everything. Whether the product is some AAA blockbuster or something small and forgettable, Cage always gives it the beans, and if you were to ask me why, I think it's because he really, really loves movies. Every film, and every other creative endeavour for that matter, that's ever been made was someone's passion project, someone's baby. It meant the world to someone somewhere, and Cage gives it all he's got every single time because that person and that project deserves the best. As a fellow cinephile, someone who really loves movies and cares a lot about the integrity of the creative process, I feel that. And I might not have Nick Cage's prestige or wealth or history. I don't literally have filmmaking in my blood like he does, but I see someone who cares about what he makes, and I will always respect that. Cage's dedication to any project that he touches is palpable, probably why he's been in so much shit over the years of varying quality, and his enthusiasm really is infectious. I'm so glad this infectious enthusiasm has made it into the community because I've never seen a release so completely unify the DVD player base in appreciation and enjoyment. The Dead by Daylight community is incredibly fractured and rip each other apart like a pack of dogs at even the slightest provocation, but this chapter has pretty much no detractors at all. Hell, I'm probably one of the only people at all with anything negative to say, and that's mostly just because Flip-Flop's a dumb perk design, and plot twist makes it even more obnoxious than it already was. Just rework Flip-Flop and everything else with the patch is hunky-dory. This release is pretty much perfect, and it's exactly what this community needed. After all this time at each other's throats, it's refreshing to have something we can all come together and just have some fun with before the new killer is revealed in September, and Survivor players on Twitter shit themselves because they have a power that occasionally causes survivors to be in danger, while killer players moan that it doesn't pre-hook the survivors for you. But let's not worry about that for now, because what we have here is something truly special, and I'm so glad it lived up to expectations. Bravo, Mr. Cage, you truly are a star. What's everything I have to say about the man, the myth, the legend, Nick Cage? Are you excited for his release? Well, I'm going to assume you are. How excited are you for his release? Let me know in the comments, and while you're down there, do the whole liking and subscribing ritual because, you know, it mean a lot to me if you did that. Special thanks as usual to my legendary patrons who make videos like this possible. You lot are absolute stars, and thank you for your continued support. If you want to throw some money this way, and get some cool perks like access to the unique Discord chat and early access to my videos, then there's in the description. Never feel obliged to, but it'd be really cool if you did. And speaking of absolute gems, gotta also thank Morgan and Morgan for their continued support of the channel. If you find yourself in need of their assistance, you can always take a look at forthepeople.com or dial #kilo on your phone. The anniversary event's just ending, so I've got some last minute grinding to do, so I'll see you next time. Ta-ta for now.